Hello and welcome to Cooking the Books with Heather. Today we are making shrimp and grits with gumbo sauce from Vivian Howard's Deep Run Roots cookbook. And we had a lot going on here because the grits, the foolproof grits, are another recipe which hopefully you'll have seen before this or at the same time this one comes out. But we have those going right here because they take about half an hour at least. We've made some shrimp stock from a different recipe that should be out already, but now we're finally actually making the gumbo sauce for our shrimp and grits. So I have a Dutch oven here. It's a relatively small one, doesn't need to be huge, and I've got a little bit of it's pretty small. I know you can't see it from that direction, but sorry about that. We had to make a double batch of grits. It's huge. So we have a little bit of oil in our Dutch oven here, and I'm going to add some sliced andouille. So this is a kind of spicy Cajun sausage, and I need something to turn it with, which I have forgotten. And it's sliced into 1/3 inch just rounds. And we're just gonna brown this a little bit. This is, I think, fully cooked, but you want to heat it up before you eat it anyway. This will get well cooked in the sauce though. So we're just browning our sausage to release some of the seasonings into the pan and to release some of its oil into the pan, because we need a little bit more oil to handle the vegetables, but we want to get the seasoning from the sausage in here. You could also use just smoked sausage if you don't like it very spicy. The spice from this really goes throughout the whole dish, and it's not usually overpowering the andouille we use. So she says to brown this over medium heat. Our medium is usually a little bit too low to get things really brown. So I've got it a little bit higher than my actual medium. But so yeah, we're just gonna brown this, and I'm gonna be stirring this and stirring that and just waiting until it's brown, and then we'll have another step for you. Yeah. Okay, if you can see me through all the steam, I think my andouille is brown enough, so I'm just going to take it out and put it back in this bowl. It's going back into the hot stuff anyway, so I'm not worried about if there happen to be any raw meat germs in there. So I'm going to take all of this out. I'm going to turn it back down a little bit. All right, so I took my sausage out, and she says to pour out, if you have more than 2 tablespoons of oil, to go ahead and pour out until you think you have 2 tablespoons. I don't think I have more than 2, but I'm probably just about right. And so now I'm gonna go ahead and add another ingredient. In here I have some just green bell pepper and some yellow onion, both sliced thinly. And now I'm going to add the salt that she called for in this part of the recipe, the gumbo sauce. And so we're going to brown these over medium heat for approximately 15 minutes. We want them to be browned and shrunken and basically cooked. So we'll see in about 15 minutes. So my peppers and onions have been cooking for, I don't know, 20 minutes or so. They're definitely nicely browned and cooked, and she says reduced by about half, which seems to me about what mine are at. And so now we're going to add some sliced garlic cloves. She does not say to mince these, just slice them. And we're going to add some dry white wine. So there we go. Now, we're going to cook this down until we think there's only about 1/4 cup of liquid in this pan. So that's definitely something you have to just judge by eye. So this is a cup. We want it to be 3/4 gone. So that'll be a judgment call. She does not give a suggested time for that. So I'll let you know how long it takes for me. We've got about 1/4 cup left of our wine in here, of our liquid. And now I'm going to add the rest of the things that we need to. And I've got some okra. Sadly, it is not okra season here. So I have some frozen sliced okra. It's sliced slightly thicker than she says, and it is still a little bit frozen, but it will be fine because it will cook in, it's all going to go in the sauce and cook down like that anyway. So frozen is not a bad option here for this application. I'm going to add our sausage back into the pan, our andouille that we browned earlier. I'm going to add tomatoes. Now, this is the one recipe that I did not make because I didn't make it back when it was tomato season. So she says to use her tomatoes in jars. I am just using canned diced tomatoes with no seasonings or anything, but including the liquid. It's slightly less than by, volume than she calls for, but I'm sure it will be just fine. So this is quite a bit of our shrimp stock going in here. Oops, it's not poured all over the place. Got a little bit on my stove, but that's okay. And then we have just a little bit of chili flakes, red pepper flakes. And we're going to bring this to a boil, and we're going to simmer it uncovered for about 25 minutes. And so that will thicken a lot, being uncovered and simmering. It will get rid of a lot of the water, and it will thicken. So, because we don't really want a gumbo that is, as thin as this. So I guess we'll see you in about 25 minutes. Our gumbo sauce has been simmering for quite a while. In fact, it's been pretty much boiling. I think about 45 minutes, maybe closer to an hour. You can probably check the time maybe and see how long exactly, but it's finally looking like a sauce instead of a soup. So I'm much happier with it now. She says to reduce it by about half. So I think we're about there, and we're ready to finish the sauce. So I'm going to add some sherry vinegar and go ahead and cut this up into a couple pieces. Some unsalted butter. Of course, they all stuck together. And we're just gonna stir this up, and then she says just keep this warm while you make the final portion of the shrimp and grits, which is the shrimp. That's what we're missing right here. We have everything except the shrimp here in our gumbo sauce. So we'll be making that next. So we're ready to finish our shrimp and grits. So the next thing we have to cook is our shrimp. Those are gonna be served separately. They're not in the sauce. I have, she says, a 12-inch skillet or a cast iron skillet. I just have my stainless steel one with some butter melting over high heat. Okay. So she says to pat your shrimp dry. I've had them in this bowl in the refrigerator, so like the top is dry and whatever on the bottom has been sort of absorbed by the paper towel. And we're gonna put this in the in this skillet, and we're gonna let them sit for 3 minutes. Spread them out a little bit just to make sure. There we go. Let them sit for 3 minutes. This has been about 3 minutes, and so now we're going to season our shrimp with the salt I dumped a bit on my stove. I have just a little bit of cayenne pepper. I maybe even went a little bit light on what the recipe called for because kids. And then a little bit of lemon juice. Now we're gonna sort of scrape these up and toss them around. Put it back in the pan. And she says to go ahead and turn the heat off. I'm gonna let these cook a little bit longer because one side hasn't gotten cooked at all. So I'm just concerned. I know they don't take long to cook, but we're just gonna let it cook for just a second. There we go. You don't want to overcook shrimp, but also don't want them to come out of the pan. All right. I'm pretty good here. They look pretty much all done. Turning the heat off. And now we just get to serve it. Thank goodness, this took a while. So we're gonna serve grits with gumbo sauce on top and then top it with some shrimp. And we'll show you what that looks like. On this episode of Cooking the Books with Heather, you watched me make Vivian Howard's shrimp and grits with gumbo sauce from her Deep Run Roots cookbook. Now, this recipe took a really long time because in actuality, it is shrimp stock, grits. So those are two separate recipes. And then in this recipe, there are two other things to make, which is the gumbo sauce and then the shrimp. So it felt like I was cooking forever because I was making these all. I didn't have the shrimp stock made and ready to go. I was making them sort of all at once before we could have dinner, and it took a really long time. So I have to admit, that was a thing for me. But we really like shrimp and grits, and we chose this recipe because it is the closest to sort of what when I first made shrimp and grits, I chose a recipe that had andouille in it and had some vegetables. I think it's bell peppers and some onions and just a little bit of a sauce. And so we chose this to make, I chose this one to make first out of the 3 recipes that were in books that we're cooking from for this channel so far. Because it was the most like that, and it was the one I thought my husband would like the most. So it was a lot, but I think it was worth it. Now I did like that the shrimp is cooked entirely separately. So for this recipe, you make a gumbo sauce and then you just saute your shrimp and you serve the gumbo sauce and put the shrimp on top. So that makes it very easy to not overcook the shrimp. So the shrimp were actually very tasty, very well cooked, not overdone at all. And I think we all kind of liked the gumbo sauce. Honestly, it was not overly spicy, and I'm sure it depends on the andouille or the sausage that you choose, because that contributes a lot of the spice to this. I don't think. Yeah, you put a little bit of cayenne on the shrimp themselves, but in the sauce, the only spice you get is from the andouille. So that was good. Kids loved it. My daughter requested the leftovers, and then we had a lot of the gumbo sauce left over and a lot of grits left over, actually. And I ended up having some of the gumbo sauce with, I baked some eggs in it, which was actually really good over top of some of the grits. So that was a great use of that when we had no more shrimp left over. Could have made more shrimp, but you know, whatever. So it does make an awful lot of the gumbo sauce. Oh yeah, it also calls for the canned, or the tomatoes in jars that she makes, but I did not make those. And if I had, it would not have been that day. So anyway, if you make all of the recipes that are contained in this recipe, it's a lot of work, but I think it was really delicious. And if I were to make the grits sort of my own way and make the gumbo sauce, if I already had the shrimp stock and just use canned tomatoes like I did this time, I think it'd be not that hard, but making everything the way that she, and all at once, and the way that she lays out with the grits particularly, I just thought the grits were a little extra for me. Then I would definitely make this recipe again, make the shrimp and the gumbo sauce and serve over grits that I make sort of my own way. And I have the shrimp stock, and if I didn't, I would probably just use some vegetable broth, probably from a stock or a bouillon, or I usually keep sort of a soup base sort of things in the refrigerator just for when I need a little bit of that. And with those modifications, it would be a lot less work. So if you enjoyed watching me make this, please give me a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, and come back and watch me make something else.